when you're growing a business, there are a lot of sacrifices that the spouse has to make.
There's been a lot of times I might have fired myself for mistakes that I've made here through the years.
If the future you will not get upset about this, why should you get upset about it today?
Maybe 2021, when we started the brokerage business and rates were at 0%, was the only like sustained
the good old days
where I was like, we are geniuses. And we're like the stock market up and down. And if you like dictate your emotions to what happened today or what happened to yesterday, then you're just constantly in this kind of like back and forth.
As a leader, you do have to get over it fast, right? Yeah. What it feels like inside of Evernest is like just like a slog, like a muddy, grimy,
step by step, feel good about their businesses,
step by step slog. It should be hard to build a big business.
I think it shouldn't sometimes. I don't know why I think that, but all right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Evernest Property Management Show. Today, it's a bit of a reflective episode. So earlier this week, in Birmingham, there's this Alabama Ventures Club, and they give out an award to a top entrepreneurial company. Evernest was nominated, and we won. Now, this is not just all about Evernest winning, but Matthew gave a speech that was kind of reflecting over the past 15 years. And we really like these lessons learned episode because it lets us to go back and say, hey, what went right, but mainly what went wrong? And in this business, about 1% of the things go right and 99% go wrong, or at least that's how it feels.
It's definitely how it feels.
It's definitely how it feels. And so we're going to kind of talk through like what has helped us get to this point, and try to be transparent with a lot of the learnings and mistakes and failures.
And we're not going to dig into the details of property management today. It's really more about the psyche of the leaders in the organization, and obviously this crowd that I was able to give a speech to was a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of venture capitalists, a lot of private equity people. So, but it was kind of like a rallying cry to the entrepreneurs. One of the things I think people do when they get in and win an award is they want to like lean on all the great things that they did. And I kind of took the opposite, ode to Charlie Munger. What are all the like tough things about building a business? So we're going to talk about those today. I'm pretty excited. The speech landed really well. People were coming up to me afterwards saying that that they just like appreciated it so much. One guy, he said, and we'll get to this, but he said, I couldn't sleep last night because I was stressing about a problem. So if you're an entrepreneur or you're leading part of one of these property management business, I think you're going to love this episode because we're going to talk about the grind, the things that people don't talk about.
This is the anti-highlight reel. This is the things that you don't post on X or LinkedIn or Instagram. But I think it's realities that everybody feels and like nobody really kind of talks about publicly.
Yeah, so I'll give you kind of like the preview. We're going to talk about people, and we're going to dig in on like who, right? Like everybody always talks about how get great people, and that is the truth. But we're going to take that a couple layers deeper. The second thing is going to be run your own race, and then the third thing is just about not quitting. When things get tough. So I think that's a good cue up. Why don't we jump into some of the material?
It is. And the last thing I'll say is so we're at this lunch center and Matthew's giving the speech, and it was just like a good reminder because I even ebb and flow. And it's like, I've had some hard things this week, and you look up and you're like, nothing feels like it's working. And so like I was sitting there kind of being like reminded, especially like the don't quit component of this. And so I appreciated this. And so we thought, other people might be feeling the same way. And so
for sure, if you're building a business, you're for sure feeling this way.
Yeah. So it's a good reminder. So I'll probably go back and listen to this consistently.
All right, let's talk about the first. We're going to talk about the people matter most. And so one of the things I wanted to highlight is not just tell people why, or tell the audience why people matter the most, but it's also dig into who the people are that matter the most, right? And the first one I think is going to be a little bit surprising. It's not surprising if you're building a business, but I don't think anybody talks about this is your spouse or your significant other. As an entrepreneur, you're out there and we get all the glory because we're out there grinding and, driving the business forward, and everybody talks about the entrepreneur, but very few people talk about their significant other at home. And so one of the things I highlighted was my spouse, Steph, And the two things that I think that spouse are required of spouses for anybody leading an organization or growing an organization is support and sacrifice. And those two things like are totally different. I'll start with sacrifice first because when you're growing a business, there are a lot of sacrifices that the spouse has to make. It's first thing is just money. When you're growing a business and you start a business, like if you founded a business, you probably could go get a job elsewhere making a lot more money. And so the spouse has to sacrifice. Maybe they have to work a job. Steph worked a job for the first 10 or so years of this organization as we were getting it started. Now it was her own business as well, but we required an income, and so she made a lot of sacrifices there. The other thing too is just time, right? We had a growing family, our children were growing up, and I spent a lot of time on the road. Who would have thought growing a national property management company would put me on the road all the time? But I spent a lot of time on the road. And so that meant like missed dance recitals, missed baseball games. And Steph was the one that jumped in and was kind of the backbone of the family.
Has she always gotten it and understood?
Yeah,
how do y'all
that's a
talk
good question.
about that?
I think if she was here, maybe one day we'll interview her because that would be a spicy
My wife
interview.
would love that because she always jokes about getting, the Evernest like leadership team wives together because there's, they've got their own kind of set of stories because they see they feel the sacrifice.
Yeah, you come home, you're like beat up.
Yeah.
You've been like giving all day and solving so many problems. And something as basic as what we're having for dinner. What should we have for dinner? You're like, I do not want to solve another problem. We'll just have whatever is in the refrigerator. Yeah, look, I think anybody, when you're asked to sacrifice, the way I would explain the spouse's role is, if the entrepreneur is on a roller coaster, and we do feel like we're on a roller coaster every day, the leaders of these organizations are on a roller coaster. You're like the highest highs and the lowest lows. Mm-hmm. Well, we ask our spouses to go on that same roller coaster, except they're blindfolded. They don't have as much visibility into what we're doing as we do, mm-hmm. right? We know that, over the next kind of like valley will be, we'll get back to the top, but they just don't have that same visibility. And so, I would say it would be impossible over the last 15 years for her attitude to be perfect. But I will tell you, she's done a really great job, and she's grown too, right? Like as we all do,
mm-hmm.
matured and understood what was required of being an entrepreneur spouse. And she doesn't love it all the time.
Yeah.
But she has consistently sacrificed.
And it's similar. So I didn't start this business. I've tried to approach it from a ownership since like day one. And it's interesting looking at other friends that work different jobs, just have different requirements. Like there's just a different time requirement that I have. And it includes like travel. I mean, there's periods, there were 2 or 3 years ago, I was actually looking back last week, and it was like for a 9-week period, like I was in a hotel more than I was like at home. And like, I don't love that transparently, but like it's required sometimes. And so I do think on the support side, like knowing that it's important. And so I've got to be intentional with the way that I communicate to Erica what this travel or kind of what this trip is, because I've got young kids. I got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So we're in the thick of it with just like not having a bunch of free time. And that puts the burden on her. And she's like great and happy and like super supportive to do it. But I've got to be intentional with that but she's always been very supportive of me, knowing that if I give good communication, then we can figure it out, because it does take a lot of time. There are late nights. It's not always, but there are late nights. There's weekends. There's consistent travel. We're going to the Philippines or going to Mexico. So the time sacrifice for me has been like the biggest challenge.
When I had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, they were a little further apart. They were like 3 and newborn. I can remember being at work was actually easier than being at home. So there is no doubt being your spouse is harder today than it is to be a working person. And that was when I always told the story of me even going in on Saturdays and writing a lot of these processes. Scarlett and Knox were very young at the time. And I don't know that I fully, and you did a great job of it, tied out what support is. Support is is being a cheerleader, cheering you on, right? Like sacrifice, you can do that with a bad attitude. Support is the right attitude, so that when you do get home and you're fully exhausted, that person's still cheering you on and saying, hey, you can do it, right?
Yeah.
I'm proud of you, those types of things. So, you can definitely build a business with somebody who's willing to sacrifice but not support. It would be hard for somebody who's not willing to sacrifice to build a business.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, both of them just makes the journey so much better.
It does. And my wife, she's like racking up a bill, like a consulting bill for Evernest is the way that she jokes about it. She actually is a really good like thought partner through this, but she's just a good listener. And sometimes that's what I need. I need to come home and kind of vent all of these problems. And like, that's another way that she can support me, is just say, well, sit there at the end of the day. I'm exhausted. I might not even want to talk about the day, but she'll kind of start pulling me out. And it's like a flywheel. I'll start getting ramped up and then I'll talk for an hour about things. She's just like super supportive with that, kind of giving me space to talk through all the problems. She didn't like fully understand everything, but she's been on this journey with me for the past 7 or 8 years that we've been married. And that has been super, super helpful for me. So kind of willingness to pick up on the time whenever, travel and all this stuff, but also willing to kind of like listen to the problems and hear what's going on and help you think through things. But then just like the belief that like, you're going to do it and we're going to do it and it will be worth it in the end.
Kind of the Stockdale paradox, right? Like the unwavering belief that you're going to get there, but you recognize all the problems.
Yeah.
And I would say too, like one of the lessons I learned is as you get to know your significant other really well, knowing what problems they can handle and what problems they can't. There are some things that I just don't share with Steph because it's just, it may make me feel better, but it makes her feel worse. And that's just not fair.
Yeah.
So also knowing what problems you can pass off or that your spouse or significant other is willing to share is super important.
Yeah. Spouses play a huge, huge part in this.
I think, let's round this out because we have so much more to talk about. But I think that they are the unsung heroes. They are the behind the scene heroes. Our spouses or our significant others are the ones that are like holding things together. And I just think we probably don't talk about it and talk about them and honor them enough. So I thought it was important to do that.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, let's talk about the next thing. And this is probably the thing everybody thought we would talk about, and we are going to talk about it. But one of the things that I reflected on as I was putting this together is just how important the people are in a day and age where the people in the organization, the people that are building the organization, and just like technology gives us so much leverage today, we're having a lot of aha moments in technology. Every week it feels like something crazy and great's happening that's allowing us to get more operating leverage. But the most aha moments I've had at this organization are when I hire a great person. And so, I was able to honor you. I was able to honor Curran. Both of y'all came into the organization about the same time. You've been here a little over a decade, and just the value that great people like you and Curran, that you guys kind of like grew up in the business, and just the value you've been able to contribute over the last 10 years is just shocking.
I was thinking about this. I have enjoyed, like, this business is really hard. I think growing any business is hard. Property management is really hard. There's a line in the EOS Life, I think, and it talks about like your meetings have to be filled with like intense debate, but also laughter. And it's like the combination of those two that make it enjoyable. And you've got to actually enjoy the people that you work with if you want to be in this for the long haul. Like, you're not going to be somewhere for 10 years, 5 years, and actually enjoy your time there if you don't enjoy the people. And so that's like one aspect of it is, when you build these long-term relationships, like, you deeply know people, there's a lot of trust, like, it gives you freedom to operate. And so I think about other friends that I know that change job every 2 years, and it's just like, you're resetting that like relationship clock.
Interesting.
And I think about that a lot. I have not done that. I've done the opposite. I've been here for 10 years. There's no like right answer, but I appreciate knowing people kind of deeply, having a ton of trust with them. And there's people that I've hired, like Eddie Campbell for 6 or 7 years ago. Just the context that he has about this business. I can bring a problem. I know how he's going to react. I know what he's going to do to it. Like, you need people like that around you who have skill sets that are different than yours, that have a lot of deep context that you really trust, because there's so many problems. And I feel the weight when I don't have those people to say, hey, can you help me with this? The weight of all of the problems just can slow you down.
We often talk around here about the speed of trust. And the more you trust somebody, the faster you can go. And after 10 years, you and I can have a very quick conversation because we're both like 99% up to speed on everything else. And so, almost we're to the point now where we could give each other a look and you'll know what I'm thinking because we've been together for so long. And I think if you're going to build a great organization, you just have to provide an environment where people want to be there a long time, and you continue to honor them and honor their time there, and provide them more and more opportunities to grow.
What do you think that you've done to set up that type of organization? Because there's been a handful of people that like Spencer was here for 11 years. I've been here for me and Karen have been here for 10. There's a lot of people that have been kind of like 5 or 6 years. What do you feel like you've done?
It's a good question. I don't know. I think probably the first thing that comes to mind is I just think about y'all a lot and think about, oh man, when you have important people on your team, if you're not thinking about them a lot and trying to provide them more opportunities to grow and trying to add value to them, then I think you're probably missing the boat. You're probably going to get more transactional relationships. And I think the other thing is like caring personally. I think about y'all as like, I think about your families a lot. I think about your hard work here at Evernest. I think also I'm so thankful for that. I think some of that comes through to y'all. And those are my thoughts.
Yeah, and I think you were just wired to think long term, like you've set the vision of this long term. And so I think when leaders can think long term, there's been a lot of times I might have fired myself for mistakes that I've made here through the years. I might have gone home and told Erica or told I should probably be fired for that. And not that you don't hold accountable, but you've got a long-term mindset. And it's like, all right, these are learning mistakes. And that's how you kind of view it. And so you give people a lot of freedom to kind of like fail up. And I think that is another component of this because and the other part is being predictable. So if you have a boss that you bring a problem to, you have no idea how they're going to react. That is a really hard thing. Problems will not get brought to you. But when you're predictable, you've got a long-term mindset and people know that you want them to fail up and then they've got your best interest. And there's less focus on, I screwed this up and I'm a failure. It is, all right, let's just learn from that. That was a $10,000 mistake. That's part of your education. Here's what we're going to let's not make this mistake again. And so I think those three things, if a leader has that, I can build a lot of trust within their team.
And if you're the leader, probably nobody's made more expensive mistakes. It should be that nobody's made more expensive mistakes than you have. And I can remember when I first started buying and selling houses, and it was kind of like, actually, it was towards the end of my buying and selling career because this happened during the recession. We bought a house in a more affluent area of Birmingham, and we put a bunch of money into it. And then 1 year later, we sold it for the exact same number that we bought it for. And so it's like all the money we put into it, the carrying costs, just a year of stress. And it was almost to the day that we sold it. And I remember it cost us about $70,000. And I just thought that may be the biggest mistake I ever make in my career. Like the $70,000 to me at the time was like $1 billion. And I just thought, I was just so depressed about it. And the irony is, I actually live down the street from this house now, like only 2 or 3 doors down from this.
Do you still think about it when you drive by?
Actually, I don't. I don't think about it at all. The lesson here is I've made way more expensive mistakes than $70,000.
More zeros on there.
Like into the millions, I would say. And I would kill for just $70,000 mistakes today. So one of the cool things I heard somebody say one time is, if the future you won't get disappointed, right? The future you have, like whether it's financially or wherever you are in your business, if the future you will not get upset about this, why should you get upset about it today? And so that's the way I've tried to think about it. The future me is not going to get upset about this number. Now I've made some recent mistakes, and I'm having a hard time believing the future me is not going to be disappointed. But nonetheless,
you love giving advice on a podcast that a week later you're like, why did I say that? Because it's so hard.
There is nothing worse than telling. When we go through our principles, I think about this all the time. We have one that's like, make your worst call your first call, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm having to live up to my own principles here. So, I'm going to round this out because, again, we have so much. I mean, we're just on point number 1, but Andy Stanley had a great line, and he said, I'm not the most talented. I just got here first. And that's truly the way I feel about this organization. It's amazing to me how talented everybody. We have 500 people, and I'm constantly meeting new people and amazed at just how talented they are in certain areas. And so I do feel like that's where I think the thankfulness comes from is I know that, we have a principle that says, you can go fast alone, but it requires a team to go far. And I just think, man, for us to get here, it requires all these talented people working together. And so I think it's super important that as you grow your organization, you're just continuing to hire people that intimidate you. And that's what I've always looked at the lens through is if I'm a little nervous about somebody coming in and seeing what a mess Evernest is, then I know that that's the right person.
Super glad you're intimidated by 24-year-old May. All right.
Let's talk about one last point about people. And I think I actually tied this to a couple of my friends who were in the audience at the time that are part of a forum that I'm a part of. And I think one of the things that we see about friends in life and people that'll support you is everybody, there's a lot of people that are willing to support you when you're down. But when you actually succeed, who is genuinely excited for you? Who is genuinely who's not keeping a scorecard of, oh man, well, I hope Gray succeeds, but no, as long as he doesn't succeed bigger than me. I think those are like true friends, people that are willing to see you succeed far and above what they're doing.
It's there was one time I had a birthday dinner and somebody told me, they were like, you're always happy for anything that like goes wrong. And that was like the highest compliment that I could have, because I've felt that from other people in my life. And I've like tried to model that, because those type of people, super, super valuable in life. And there's not everybody's like, I've got a handful of maybe friends that like fit in that category that will just like celebrate the really high highs with you. And they're super excited for you. And then when things are really hard and when they're low, they'll kind of like sit with you. And so not every single friend, there's probably a handful of people like in everybody's life. Maybe y'all are better at making friends than I am, but I've got a handful of people in my life that fit in that category. And those are the people I go to when things go really well. And it doesn't even feel like I'm bragging to them, because like I know that they're going to be excited for me and I reciprocate that to them.
Yeah. Other than your mom or dad, like who gets genuinely, like who's the next phone call you make when things go right?
My mom's a little too excited for me, so it's, yeah, agreed.
That's great. So yeah, look, I would, let's tie out the people point is surrounding yourself with great people is so imperative to, whether it's a significant other, spouse, whether it's the team you're around, and then it's like your support group, like making sure that your support group are people that will not just stand with you when things are going bad, but also stand with you and be excited for you when things are going well.
All right, run your own race.
Man, I'll tell you, there have been times in this business where I felt like everybody was succeeding and I wasn't, which may come as a shock from some of the outside in terms of like what we've been able to grow the business to. But, I have friends that have sold their sold their company for hundreds of millions of dollars. And I have friends like all these, but there are times where it just feels like everybody else is succeeding and we're not. And I heard somebody say, essentially like, look, you can't be focused on what other people are doing. You have to be focused on where you're at, the opportunity you have, running your own race. And I think social media probably drives this a bunch. And you see all of people's successes and all of their highlight reels on social media. And then you like compare that to all the problems you have.
Yeah. Michael Girdley had a tweet. He's like an X influencer. It was something around the lines like, what I learned on X today, everybody else is succeeding and I'm not.
Yes.
And that's just like how it feels. But it's the same in life. Like you drive around, you're like, how do they afford this car or this house? You don't either see the debt or the family money or what they've done. But you compare that to like where you're at. And I struggle with this too, because this business is really hard. And there's maybe a few, like maybe 2021 when we started the brokerage business and rates were at 0% was the only like sustained
the good old days
where I was like, we are geniuses and we're crushing it. And I might have confused brains for a bull market. But if you look back to the 9 years, it's like, even think about buying a business. Like there's a bunch of work, like building a relationship, negotiating, diligence, and you get there and then you can post on LinkedIn, hey, we just acquired this business. And then you just sign yourself up for like 90 days plus of like hard work and pain. And there's like way more in the valley kind of climbing the mountain than mountaintop. And it feels like everybody else is always on that mountaintop.
Yeah, I would say the last 3 years, maybe it's the last 3.5 years.
Yeah.
We feel like because of interest rates remaining really high, housing prices remaining really high, and then rental rates around a lot of our markets softening, it feels like we've had a lot of headwinds. So it feels like the last 3 years, while the stock market's just ripped and people are still like, it feels like there are people succeeding. And it just felt like for the last 3 years, we've just struggled and struggled and struggled. But, the cool thing is I've been through a season like that before. Back in 2008, during the housing crisis, it took 4 or 5 years for us to come out on the other side. But then Evernest ripped for the next, from 2013 to 2022. We had 9 years where the wind was definitely in our sails and the wind was at our back. And I've just experienced periods where I work really hard and get a lot less than I deserve. But then I've also had like that 9-year run where I still worked hard, but I probably got a lot more than I deserve. So yeah. I think over the lesson I would learn here is if you stick with it over the course of time, things will work out. You'll ultimately get what you deserve based on the hard work you put in.
Yeah. And that's why having a long-term mindset, like the stock market up and down, and if you like dictate your emotions to what happened today or what happened to yesterday, then you're just constantly in this kind of like back and forth. Versus if you can like zoom out and look where you were 4 years ago and have appreciation for it. It's a little bit like The Gap in the Gain. I think Dan Sullivan, did he write that book?
He did.
Yeah, The Gap in the Gain. It's like you can focus on how far that you've come and put some focus on like where you're falling short, because you got to focus on those. Like that mindset over the past 10 years has been helpful, because you even just said, hey, we ripped for 9 years. There's a lot of moments in there. We'll talk about in a second. We're like, payroll is really tight. Like, didn't know if you're going to make it.
Yeah.
And so like, even when this like 9 year kind of
growth too.
Growth creates probably more problems than stability, I would argue. So even in those periods, just like reminding yourself that like, this is designed to be hard is helpful.
I was actually in a chat group with a bunch of fellow entrepreneurs yesterday, and I've been doing it a lot longer than they had. And they were talking about like variable comp. And I said, the thing I don't like about variable comp is it's always indexed to what happens in 1 year. And there's so many different macro factors that are outside of an entrepreneur's control that we've experienced actually hitting our 3-year goals more consistently than hitting our 1-year goals. Because, interest rates can shoot through the roof and you can say, oh, we're going to grow by 10%. And because interest rates shoot through the roof, you have a great year just staying where you are, growing 1%. And, if you index a comp to some sort of thing you thought was going to happen in 1 year, it just doesn't make any sense. Like you can have a great year and ultimately have not accomplished what your beginning of the year goals were. But I think that 3-year and like 10-year thing, it does tell the story that it does work out over those years. And there are going to be some times where you set a 1-year goal and you do like 2 or 3 years worth of stuff in 1 year.
Yeah.
You just can't predict that on the front end. And so you got to be willing to run your own race and know that there are going to be seasons where you get more than you deserve, and there are seasons you get a lot less than you deserve.
Mm-hmm.
I actually told a story. We were raising capital a number of years ago. This was 4 or 5 years ago, and we were growth burns cash. I mean, we talked about it, and when you're growing a business, you're having to hire much faster than the business is coming on, and so that you can support the business. The last thing you want to do is grow a business and lose it. But I can remember being with one of kind of like our team, and being in New York, and I'm like 50 stories up in this like sweet conference room, looking around the city, and we're trying to like put on a good face on one side and raise some capital to continue to grow the business. And on the other side, we're trying to close a loan so that we can make payroll. And like, this was like on a Wednesday. I can remember it because, and look, this is also about having great people around you, because it was really a loan from one of our investors. Mm-hmm. So we had confidence it was going to work out. But it's not like you don't sleep at night. Like, when something like that happens, like, it changes the investor can change their mind, even though we had confidence they were gonna do it. And so I told that story, and I had a ton of people come up to me afterwards and say, "Hey, same thing happened to me." Even a guy who's in private equity said, "I got a call from one of my portfolio companies, and they said, we're not going to make payroll on Friday." And he was like, "All right." And he said, we need X number of dollars to make payroll. And he was like, "Well, how long do I have?" And they said, "We have till tomorrow." So, again, like, there are some, not only, like, obviously that's stressful, but it's also part of a growing company. Like, growth sucks cash.
I was listening to Shoe Dog, which is one of our favorite books, one of my favorite books for sure. Actually, last night I put it on. That was the Pay Nisho first chapter. And so Phil Knight was talking about growing. This is before really venture capital or private equity existed. But they had a lot of debt, and just like how much cash it took back then. And I feel like you're not a real entrepreneur if you haven't almost missed payroll a few times. Like, talking to my dad he's owned his own business for like 35 years, and like, he's got his story. So it's not fun in the moment. And how do you it's
definitely the stories you talk about later, though.
Oh, for sure. So you got to remember that in the moment as kind of doing this for the story. Mm-hmm. How do you compartmentalize that? Like, you are raising capital, which is selling the vision, selling why this will be a good investment, while you have this going on. Like, how do you compartmentalize?
Well, you also have to remember the reason for it that's kind of like why I told the story, is the business was growing so quickly that it was consuming a lot of cash. Yeah. So it wasn't
easier to compartmentalize.
Yeah. It was like, hey, this is kind of like part of being a successful business.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit easier to compartmentalize, but it does. I mean, there are some times where bad things happen here, like maybe a big client fires you. Mm-hmm. And as a leader, you've got to compartmentalize that to go maybe have another external conversation with another client, right? So, while that specific incident, it's not as applicable. As a leader, you do have to
totally
get over it fast, right? Yeah. To use the, what's the guy on Apple TV that is the soccer coach?
Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso. Yeah, you got to be a goldfish. You got to remember it for 1 second and then move on.
Didn't expect I didn't have Ted Lasso quote on my bingo card for this podcast.
Well, let's round out this one, because I think comparison is a great way to make you miserable. And I think if you are in the grind right now and you're struggling, right? Like, growing a business, I think it looks like it on the outside when people are growing a business, but every business that I've seen and been a part of and been able to see the other side of it. They're messy, they're hard, people are grinding. If you feel that, this does not disqualify you from being successful. It actually means that you're in the game becoming successful. And what's funny is, you and I have had these conversations where we're like, golly, it feels like such a grind. It feels like such a grind. And it is. But then you like poke your head up and you turn back and you say, wow, wait, we were there 3 years ago? And you realize, wow, look how far we've come in 3 years. And so I think it's important for people to know what it feels like inside of Evernest is like just like a slog, like a muddy, grimy,
We're gonna make people feel good about their businesses,
step by step slog. But then you look back and you're like, man, we have come a long way.
Yeah. Knowing that it's really hard, have you ever wanted to quit?
Yeah, that was my point number 3 is don't quit. So this quote by Ben Horowitz always, like, it's probably one of my favorite. There's a number of them in the book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, but this is one that has always really stuck with me. And he basically said, and this is towards the end of the book, he said, when I go talk to entrepreneurs who have made it, he said the mediocre ones always talk about, I made this great, I had this great idea. I'm this like great CEO and
strategy. Was great.
Yeah. And he said the best entrepreneurs are the ones that just recognize I just didn't quit. And it's always stuck with me because I talked about it when we were talking about the spouse thing. Like, you're on a roller coaster. You just have to recognize that there are going to be times where this feels really hard. And it feels like objectively, because it's hard, I should not be doing this. But the reality is, it may be being hard, may be exactly why you should be doing it. Because when I've done hard things and then had success, the sense of accomplishment and being proud, even being proud of consistently working when things are hard and being willing to show up every day and grind when things are hard, I think that just builds like so much character and builds, so much of what's gotten Evernest to where we are today.
Talk about you had a quote in there. It was like, it's not dramatic, it's not emotional, it's just rational. Like, the math isn't working. Like, I think you maybe talk about that. Like, you felt that before. And so how do you tie that with like, not quitting?
And look, like, the way it's funny when there are lots of times, there are seasons like 2019, even seasons over the last 3 years where I would wake up almost every night at 2:00 in the morning stressing about something. And I still do it. Like, it still happens. Like, it happened, ironically, it happened the day I was giving the speech. We have a client that's frustrated, and I just like woke up thinking about that client. I meant to send an email to that client before I went to bed, and I forgot to do it. And so, like, those are the moments where when you wake up at 2:00, you feel if everything feels like it's not going to work. And you can even like talk yourself into thinking, oh, it's probably better for me to get out of this thing because, you can't make it make sense in your head. Like, how is this going to happen? But what I've always done is woken up. Number one, when I wake up in the morning, I have a lot more vision and a lot more ability to deal with things like that. And I just make the next phone call or, talk to the next owner or send the next email and like put my head down and get to work. And it's just amazing how things seem to work out. Sam Altman, who, has he certainly is a pretty polarizing figure these days, but he has a quote that they attribute to him that says, it's amazing how the world will bend to your will if you if you kind of like push on it. And so if you're dead set on succeeding, you just have to have, like the Stockdale paradox, unwavering faith that you're going to succeed and face the brutal facts every day. Fix one problem at a time.
Yeah, because the question coming to mind, if I was sitting on the other side, would be, is that not like selection bias? Like in Ben Horowitz's book, he's around other entrepreneurs that have succeeded and they all didn't quit. Are there a lot of other people that had that same mentality and like the math just didn't work and eventually, the business kind of shut down? And so like, how do you tie those two together?
So yeah, I've actually thought a lot about this because I asked the same question. And the reality is why entrepreneurs and business builders get so much of the glory is because the risk is so high.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is there were people that thought that did not make it.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality also is if you don't think that, you 100% will not make it.
Yeah. You got to have that, the Stockdale paradox component of it.
Yes.
And it's like dealing with the brutal reality because that might result in a pivot. That might result in changing how you approach the business or the strategy. Like those might be kind of like ways out of it. Because I don't think the math is just hard coded in every business to not work, but there's different ways. And so it's like the combination of those two would be my answer to that of why it's not just like selection bias of just like not quitting.
Yeah. Well, that the people that did make it think that.
Yeah.
And so like when you look back, there were probably people that did not make it that thought that too. But if almost 100% of the people that did make it think that way, then you have to think that way.
You should not think that way just because there were people that didn't make it. And
and that's the risk too, right? Because it goes back to the story we love to tell where I'm sitting in a room interviewing you and telling you, oh, Gray, we're going to open offices all over the country. And, we're going to be managing 25,000 doors. And there's some risk associated with that because you're going to give up part of your life. There's some opportunity cost for you to go work somewhere else. And if I'm lying, which I did walk out of there being like, am I lying to this guy? If I'm lying or it doesn't work out, then you've given up something too. So there is some risk to being a visionary. There is some risks to painting a picture for people because the risk is you end up, and this is the fear, you end up looking dumb.
Yeah. I don't know what the alternative is though, if you like want to actually grow a business, because it's like to recruit the people that you need to get there, like those people latch onto that. And there's a part of me that knows that like, that might not be true, but it'd be fun to try, you know? But I feel that too, if people have recruited and promised not certain things, but you kind of like share the vision of this is where we're going and you get people to believe it. And then there's a period where it's not coming true and you're just like, well, darn, like I'm in that kind of like season of failure. So I've been there before. I don't know what the alternative is.
Well, and I think, one of the things that I would say, some advice I would give people right now is get advice from believable people. Everybody is willing to give their opinion these days. But one of the things, like even your parents or like, your friends that are like in different industries, when you're struggling, they will give you, because they want the pain to stop for you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're struggling, they may say, oh, well, you just need to quit that. You just need to get out of that. But the reality is that, and they may be right. Like if they're believable people, they may be right.
Yeah.
But all good things are uphill. All businesses are hard to build. And so I wouldn't always accept hard for wrong. And sometimes because it's hard means you're exactly where you should be. And by staying in there, you're going to get the sense of pride and accomplishment of being willing to stick with it. And then if and when you achieve that goal, you're going to get the sense of pride and accomplishment for making it through the mud and the muck. Charlie Munger had a great quote about this. He's like, it should be hard to build a big business.
I think it shouldn't sometimes. I don't know why I think that, but I'm like, why is this so hard?
By definition, it should be like for you to feel good about building it. If it was easy, you wouldn't feel a sense of accomplishment by accomplishing it.
Yeah.
If all of us could go be professional football players, nobody would give a crap about professional football players because we could all do it. Mm-hmm. But the reality is they're working 7 days a week right now in the off season for the next season. And it's a grind.
It's a grind. All right. You want to wrap it up?
Yeah, look, I think, as I was able to, just really enjoy getting to get up in front of everybody. And I think some of the feedback I got was just the transparency that people really appreciated, the transparency. And as I told you, people were coming up and telling me stories of, I didn't sleep last night, or yeah, I had a portfolio company reach out and say, we can't make payroll tomorrow. And so I think, what I want is for people to know that maybe on the outside, Evernest looks like it's always perfect or things are going really well. But on the inside, we're real people trying to like make sense of all of this as well. And so as a founder and an entrepreneur myself, I think sharing these types of experiences and being fully transparent with the audience and with people in our industry, hopefully it'll be helpful to them. Hopefully it'll make them feel better to say, yeah, I feel that way. And so good, Matthew feels that way, because I think the risk is if you feel that way, you feel like you're the only one that feels that way. Everybody else is succeeding and you're failing.
Yeah. C.S. Lewis has a quote. It's like a true friend is made when you have like a, oh, me too moment. And that's what like a take from some of that is like, when you understand, like everybody kind of like wants that. And so it wants to be understood. And so hopefully by sharing this, at the award ceremony and here, it just levels it off that like, hey, we struggle with a ton of things too. And we're all kind of like in this building together. And so, I think you got to find your people. You got to run your own race. You got to not quit.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And those are our three reflections from over a decade of building the business together.
That's it. All right. Well, this has been another episode of the Evernest Property Management Show. Tune back in another 2 weeks when we drop another episode.
Bye, everybody.